We're going to look at it. So foul there on Indiana, on hole there. But then that is a technical.
That is a technical. Dead ball, contact technical.
It's a little surprising to see so many of these happen in one game because...
Oh, and I don't like the way Lexie held.
Do you recall this play from the last meeting between the Minnesota Lynx and Indiana Fever? Did Lexie Hall just receive the best thing? Retaliation against Kayla McBride this time. The last time these two were on the same court, McBride's elbow struck Hall in the face, and the referees inadvertently gave him a penalty. However, Hall responded in the Fever's decisive victory over Minnesota, leaving the audience in disbelief. This went beyond simply highlighting actual content. It served as both personal atonement and evidence of Indiana's perseverance. Are you curious in this particular moment and how it represents the Fever's late season run and postseason push? Let's express our admiration for Lexie in the comments section below. Come on.
Final score, Fever 83, Lynx 72. Indiana ends the regular season with an exclamation point. Fever have won 3 in a row as they enter the playoff.
When almost half of a team's rotation is eliminated, how does it genuinely survive? The hard way was how the Indiana Fever had to respond to that. Players dropped to the injury report one game after another. Due to a groin injury, Caitlin Clark is not available. Due to an MCL tear, Sophie Cunningham was unable to play. Sydney Colson suffered an ACL tear. Chloe Bibuai's knee failed to endure. Ari McDonald suffered a foot fracture. A solid beginning group may be formed from that list alone. However, they were all abruptly forced to wear street clothing. You're left looking at one of the league's smallest rosters when you add together all of those absences. Furthermore, Indiana could not have been prepared for that kind of collapse with any amount of preseason planning.
I know a lot of people will talk about Nafisa not playing, but I think they're really good without her. You know, they're just a really great basketball team. So I think it was a big win for us because they set the bar high standard wise. We know what to expect when it comes to Minnesota Lynx, and so I think going into the playoffs, it was big for us because being able to know guarding Courtney Williams, knowing that her thing is a pull-up, knowing that now instead of not knowing that, it's big for us because we give ourselves a chance, and if they are the standard, we get to see where we are.
Then the news broke. Officially, Caitlin Clark's season was ended. Initially classified as nagging, the groin issue had now permanently noted on the medical chart. Her rookie campaign was meant to have accelerated the Fever's rise to national prominence. Rather of a playoff debut, it ended with a press release. A team that already depends on her enthusiasm to get them through difficult times can be devastated by that kind of news. It affected the fan base, who watched from Indiana to Iowa on an emotional level in addition to the roster. Clark sold more than just tickets. She was the season's pulse, and her departure was the most obvious indication yet that the Fever's hopes of making the playoffs may be dashed in an instant.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been impressed with these guys since even the offseason, really the ones that I was able to work out with in the offseason, is how hard they work. There's a work ethic and there's a work style, and to approach everything in the same way, to be so energetic, enthusiastic, and dedicated every day. And I felt that way in training camp too. There weren't any days where I had to bring that out of them. So I think it's the nature of the women that we brought into this organization to continue to just bust their butts and play hard.
However, someone else had to fill the vacuum while Clark applauded from the bench. Kelsey Mitchell was that someone. She didn't merely increase her score somewhat, she turned become the focal point. She surpassed even Tamika's single-season catching totals to become the team's most productive scorer ever. She scored almost 20 points per game on average over the season. For comparison, 20 every night as she handled the ball and was doubled by the defense, and scout reports shouted her name at the top. When the Fever should have flatlined, Mitchell delivered the offensive punch that kept them in the game. You understand?
Kind of all the other things like offensive rebounding that she can do.
Knocked away. Boston comes up with a steal. Here is Mitchell veering through the paint and lays it in.
She's so quick, and especially when she gets out in the open floor, you'll see her coming down. The quick left to right crossover just gets by. I thought she was sprinting. I didn't think she was lumbering.
It was a lumber
Stand
sprint.
up for the big girl.
Mitchell like a blur. That's a
Boston was in charge of the opposite aspect of that duty. It takes more than just effort to score consistently at a rate of 15 points a night and grab over 8 rebounds in her last 10 games. It demonstrates dependability. She provided Indiana with its anchor during a season marred by absences. The team's insurance policy was her ability to clear the glass, keep possessions alive, and body bigger forwards. Boston was the middle stabilizer, regardless of the mess the lineups became. In terms of rebounds in a single season, she set a new team record. Furthermore, you cannot undervalue how that stability prevented the Fever's defense from completely breaking down.
Only 8 teams have ever done that. 7 of them went on to win the title. As Boston gets free and lays it in.
She will be on my first team.
Boston in the paint, sneaks through 2 and lays it in.
In light of everything that has happened, is it still possible for this squad to consider making the playoffs? Logically, the response ought to have been no. The narrative didn't end there though. Rather than giving up, they used each setback as inspiration. The referees, the frequent roster changes, and the frustration all turned into fuel. Originally intended to be role fillers, these players started contributing every night. The performance of hardship signings is in the double digits. Bench players proudly claim more minutes.
Fever done with the MVP, okay? Bow, bow, bow! Hell yeah. You already know what it is. Dubs in the chat, you already know what it is. You already know what it is. Let's go to the playoffs with some momentum, baby.
The pivotal moment was obvious. The Fever ceased considering the wounds as a death sentence and began to treat them as a rallying cry. Their playing style and the way that fans perceived them were both altered by that change in viewpoint. The situation was no longer in the news by the time the Minnesota Lynx entered the picture. Their tenacity and the way it prepared the ground for one of the season's most poignant victories were what counted. For what reason did this victory over Minnesota seem like more than a game? Since it was. Indiana wasn't only wrapping up the year. They were facing a club that had been regarded as the league's gold standard and was atop the standings throughout the year. This has nothing to do with pride. The goal was to stay in the playoff picture. Furthermore, the Fever didn't blink. Even though they were already guaranteed a spot in the postseason going into the game, they still had a chance to win, ascend, and rely on outcomes elsewhere. To a casual fan, that might not seem like much, but the distinction is significant. More advantageous matchups, a genuine opportunity to make an impression, and evidence that you belong at the adult table in the playoffs are all associated with a higher seed.
Before the playoffs start Sunday tonight, it's regular season game 44 of 44 for the Fever as they host the WNBA's best team in 2025, the Minnesota Lynx.
The fact that the Fever was only a few weeks ago makes it even more remarkable. They had lost 4 of their previous 5 games. They had lost momentum, fan enthusiasm was waning, and there was much discussion about whether Caitlin Clark's absence had ruined their chances of making consistent advancement. Teams there frequently disband. Rather, Indiana made a radical change. They have 3 consecutive grind-out victories in a row. Every one of them is a reflection of a roster that has managed to reinvent itself. The Minnesota game, which was the 3rd of those, was significant because it pitted Indiana against a club that no one believed they could defeat at this point.
It'll be Alana Smith jumping it up against Aaliyah Boston. The ball is tipped, and it's time to hoop at Indy.
A 10-0 run to start this game for Indiana, and Minnesota wants a timeout.
Powers up top, tees it up, 3. It's good! Energy!
Kicks it out, Powers. You bet! Back-to-back threes from Ariel Powers.
The Fever double up the Lynx in the first quarter. It's Indiana 28, Minnesota 14.
People stopped doubting them because of the manner they managed that matchup. From the first hint, the Fever appeared to have a strategy and the self-assurance to carry it out. They weren't just hanging around as seen by their first quarter run of 10-0, or the tempo was being dictated by them. They had established a double-digit lead by halftime and never once appeared concerned about blowing it. Minnesota attempted to establish a rhythm, but Indiana's pressure defense and cold shooting turned possessions into wasted trips. Out of 20 attempts, the Lynx only made 2 3-pointers, and each miss seemed to confirm that Indiana was winning this game.
Indiana is 4 for 4 from three-point range. Mitchell connects on a 3. Sims leaning jumper is good.
Kelsey driving left, puts it in off the backboard.
Will to it for the first half. Indiana shoots 58% from the floor.
The story's improbable production origins were one aspect of it. Odyssey Sims finished with 15 points after joining as a hardship signing not long ago. That goes beyond merely taking up space. She's playing like someone who is motivated to show that she still belongs at this level after coming off the bench. Aerial Powers came next. In the second half, when the Fever's lead was in jeopardy, she made consecutive 3-pointers that gave Indiana the lead again. The game's tempo was altered by that scene. 6 points wasn't all that it was. The gut punch served as a reminder to the Lynx that they wouldn't be winning this evening.
Mitchell, open 3. It's good. You can. Kelsey Mitchell is a hooper.
Passes Dantas left corner 3. Bullseye. Shot clock. Boston left block makes it in.
No one is more deserving of praise for that dominance than Natasha Howard. Every stretch she performed felt her presence on both ends. When possession stopped, grabbing rebounds, transitioning to defense, and making shots. She filled in all the voids that arise when a team loses half of its players. The bench that most had written off earlier in the year, Indiana's bench, became the glue that held the energy steady. They appeared to be the more experienced squad rather than being overpowered by Minnesota's reputation. The stats begin to highlight the situation at that point. Indiana currently has 20 losses and 24 victories. The fact that the franchise concluded with a winning record for the first time since 2015 makes that record significant. 9 years of failed rebuilds, missed opportunities, and false starts. At last, it appears as though the parts are coming together. It is not appropriate to celebrate mediocrity with that kind of milestone. It's important to acknowledge that a cultural reset has taken place. The players are aware of it. The coach is aware of it. The supporters that continue to visit Indianapolis throughout the year are aware of it. Despite wearing casual clothing, Kayla Clark was nonetheless present in the mix. At one point, cameras captured her raising her hands like a coach on the sidelines to indicate for a timeout. She was instructing, calling coverages, and even making jokes with the referees. Her teammates were watching her for signs, and it seemed that her influence hasn't diminished because she is unable to suit up. Although Coach Kate doesn't have an official position, she could have just as easily been dressed in a polo shirt throughout the match.
Fever done with the MVP, okay? Bow, bow, bow! Hell yeah. You already know what it is. Dubs in the chat, you already know what it is. You already know what it is. Let's go to the playoff with some momentum, baby.
Was this victory an anomaly then? Not a chance. The club, which is no longer fighting for survival but is demonstrating that it belongs in playoff discussions, even in the absence of its best player, put up a well-controlled statement performance. Even though the team effort was outstanding, the tale that followed was more than just a team victory. It was a single instance of personal atonement. That was Lexie Hull's moment, and her confrontation with Kayla McBride became one of the main topics of conversation that evening. What could be more fulfilling than a team proving others incorrect? Witnessing a player receive the sort of personal retribution that supporters had been anticipating. That moment for Lexie Hull arrived the instant she took the court against Minnesota. She had been the target of Kayla McBride's elbow to the face only a few weeks prior. There was pandemonium in the arena, blood on the court, and then the astonishing turn of events. Rather than discipline McBride, referees used the technical to strike Hall. The entire event transformed a difficult evening into a wild one. Fans were humiliated on her behalf in addition to being upset for her. It became yet another piece of evidence supporting the idea that Indiana is not treated fairly.
Here's Mitchell. I think that's a 2. Doesn't go.
And now it's McBride getting Hall.
Yeah, that one might be a problem.
Indiana just taking shots to the face.
Naturally, everyone's attention was focused on Hall when the Fever struck Minnesota once more. Every Indiana supporter was curious about her response. Would she be reluctant to protect McBride? Would she let that dark moment to consume her? Or would she change it to something that made the point very clear? Before the first tip, there was a lingering call for justice of some sort. This matchup wasn't your typical one. It served as a character test.
Tonight for Indiana, but then Carlton gives it right back, and Howard cashes in.
To perform like this, but they have 5 different players almost at all times who can bring the ball up the floor. Usually 4 or 5 were adept at making shots from deep. I mean, you just saw a big there creating her own look as well from Natasha Howard. Career high in terms of her field goal percentage, and you see her here, the little spin to the middle. That's a tough shot.
Due to the roster upheaval, Hall already had a lot of responsibilities. She was the last healthy wing left on the team after Sophie Cunningham was injured. This implied more shots, longer minutes, and a smaller margin for error. She put on her finest performance to date in a Fever uniform, playing nearly 40 minutes and scoring 23 points in the previous Minnesota game alone. She no longer had the appearance of a filler. She appeared to be the focal point. Additionally, the assurance was evident in each defensive rotation, drive, and jumper. Before the time came, she had accumulated all the necessary momentum.
The Minnesota team is on the cusp of watching all season long.
Now, one thing to know. Vegas currently is a 3, but if they win out, they will be the 6.
Hall found herself paired up on McBride at the top of the key during the second quarter. A single fleeting dribble to her left caused McBride to flinch. Her legs became tangled, her balance vanished, and the league's cameras caught what everyone in the arena knew right away. Kayla McBride seems to have suffered the most damage to her ankles after being dropped. After the crowd cheered, the video went viral on social media in a matter of minutes. Fans of Indiana referred to it as karma. It was amusing according to neutral fans. Everyone watching saw it as more than just basketball, but Hall saw it as simply that. Inside the building, there was an electric reaction. Colleagues leaped from their seats. As they realized they were seeing revenge in real time, they leaned forward. There was no elbow retaliation in that crossover. It was a formal agreement for justice between 2 moving actors. There was now a new clip for everyone to refer to after being repulsed by the last technical foul. Hall reversed the narrative and humiliated the same opponent who had left her bleeding rather than becoming the victim.
One of those players who is messy, and she's on your team, you love her, and if she's on the other team, she's just annoying. Right? You just gets in and rip the ball out of Smith's hands and just end the effort.
Her defensive presence was significant throughout, even beyond that one standout moment, the match. Deflecting passes, forcing disputed looks, and upsetting their flow, she remained glued to Minnesota's backcourt. Although defensive grind isn't usually captured on stat sheets, it was evident to everyone watching that she was making it hard for the Lynx guards to breathe. She made those possessions into pointless excursions and contributed to one of the league's worst attacking performances of the year for the top team. Even though it didn't receive the same viral attention as the crossover moment, that was nonetheless equally significant. The way that Hall's story reflects Indiana is what gives it resonance. Disregarded, undervalued, and bombarded with illogical calls, yet nonetheless managing to shine when it was most important. The Fever are consistently portrayed as the underdog. They also don't blend in with the surroundings like Hall. When the pressure builds up against them, they rise. More than anything else, her highlight versus McBride embodied that mentality. Lexie Hall's crossover was more than just a funny video. It encapsulated how Indiana persevered despite every setback, injury, and uncertainty that accumulated throughout the season. The perseverance that led them to their first winning record in almost 10 years was encapsulated in that one play. The Fever now have momentum going into the playoffs, with supporters giddy and the future being shaped by the prospect of Clark's return. Support is really important here. Continue to show up. Given that what we just seen is not an anomaly, keep up the good work. It appears to be the first significant step in Indiana's ascent to prominence. Let's express our affection for Lexie in the comments section below. Turn on all notifications, like, and subscribe to ensure you don't miss anything. We'll see you in the next video. Click the video on the screen.